Hello and welcome to the morning Rabble. As you can see, it's just me this morning. Unfortunately, everybody else is busy. So you'll just have to listen to me and look at this face for the next wee while. We're just going to touch on Joe Aribo. Obviously, people have probably seen what's happening at Southampton with regards to his future. It looks like, the new manager that's come in doesn't see a future for Joe. And we're just going to kind of touch on, would it be feasible for Joe to come back to Rangers, or is the going back part of it not really something that people want to see? Clearly at the moment it's just paper talk and there's not a lot happened there, but guess what, we would bring it up this morning given we've had some midfield issues and how good Joe was for his first time around before he did leave for Southampton. I think for me, on a personal note, I was always a big fan of Joe's. Also a very technically gifted midfield player, somebody with great feet, can also get up the park as well. Very much suited the style that we were playing at that point. I think obviously the big concern for a lot of supporters would be obviously the money that he's now earning down at Southampton. Would he want to come back to Scotland after already having been up here before? Or is it just that potentially, the manager would look, I know he said he wouldn't do a loan deal, but could we do a loan deal between now and the summer where Joe gets games? Obviously, we get to use Joe for the next kind of 4 months, and that helps us for the next period in time where we do have quite a short numbers in that midfield area. Okay, well, can I touch on any of the comments? If anybody's got anything they want to ask or anything they want to kind of chat about, just let us know. We're probably going to touch on, obviously, Nicholas Raskin as well. Obviously, people are wanting to know what's going on there. It seems to be becoming a bit of a saga from some people's point of view. It sounds like Standard Liège are looking for a set amount of money. Rangers at the moment aren't going to obviously pay that amount, so this could obviously rumble on for another few days right up until the end of the window. However, let's just hope it doesn't, because this kind of daily bash on social media is getting a bit tiresome, to be perfectly honest with you, but I totally understand. Robert Dixon saying, morning troops, Joe can stay where he is, wanted gone and made his bed. Yeah, look, I totally get that side of the argument, mate. Absolutely do. Especially when somebody leaves Rangers. Joe obviously decided he wanted a fresh challenge. The club, at the end of the day, did well. The club could make upwards of £6, £7, £8 million in Joe. But I just feel as though at the moment we are still short of numbers in that midfield. But it's just the fact that he's available and the fact that we could potentially move for him. I know it's unlikely it would be a permanent deal given obviously the transfer fee and the money involved in it, but it does feel like it could be a short-term fix to help us until the summer, until we potentially get more recruits in that midfield area. Stevens, never go back, totally overloaded in that spot, good player, but for me, we are well covered in that spot. Yeah, look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, when you look at that midfield area, I still don't think we've got somebody like Joe Aribo in that midfield. There's a lot of defensive players in that midfield at the moment. Joe is more capable of getting from middle to front, which is what we're looking for. And it's just one of those points that I think it's worthwhile bringing it up. And that's the thing for me. I don't think we would use him as a winger again, like we had to do before. I think the fact we've got the width now, we can't. Well, when you look at, we're using Fashion in that wide area. We've got Ryan Kent in the wide area. So Joe could easily slot in as a number 8 in the midfield, and he's more than capable of doing that. But I do agree, it's one of those ones, should you get back when you've already been at the club? But it'll be interesting. But it would only be a loan deal, I would imagine, because I would have thought the finances on that type of deal would probably outwith Rangers kind of reach as it currently stands. One of the guys on Facebook, Alan Stewart, saying Tillman is doing well as an 8. Absolutely, but I think it's always good to have options, mate. This is all I'm trying to kind of point out to people. I think when you look at that midfield, we've got a lot of 6s in there, a lot of guys that do that particular role. We probably don't have enough people that are good at playing as an 8, because we want more aggressive players. I think especially at Ibrox, you could just go with one sitter, and then you've got 2 more aggressive players in that midfield. And I think it's something we could look at. And it obviously depends what happens with the Raskin deal. Obviously a lot of these things are kind of coming and going on social media. I think as David quite clearly points out, I think there's just a need for patience, isn't there? Need to chill regarding Raskin. Giving them what they want first offer is not negotiating. The deal will be done when it's done. Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And I think it has become a wee bit of a, as I said, they're on a bit of a saga. It kind of feels like everything's been kind of played out in the media, which is never nice. I think it's much more preferable when the deal's just done and it's announced, whereas at the moment it feels like a lot of stuff's coming out of Belgium where they're maybe looking for a much higher fee than the Rangers are willing to pay, which is absolutely fine to them. But given that they've put this guy out with the first team and he's not really part of their squad, I don't really know how they can be kind of offering that amount of money for a player who's not really there. For me, Rangers on the right, I wouldn't pay more than £1 million. I know I'm not the people that's handing over the money, but I just feel as though at the moment I wouldn't be paying £2 million plus potential sell-on fees. It doesn't make a lot of sense for Rangers' point of view. Where do you see Tillman? Where do you see Cantwell playing? Sorry, I think it depends how we shape up. If we're going to play a 4-2-3-1, then Cantwell could play in the 10, which means that he's just that little bit higher up the pitch, and it allows either your midfield 2 or your midfield 3, depending on how we set up, to be that little bit higher. I think Cantwell can also play off the right or the left. So you've got that flexibility, but it depends how the manager's going to set them up, because when you look at all the attacking players we have, I'm not so sure they're all going to fit into a 4-3-3. It would probably more be suited to a 4-2-3-1. So you would have 4 players up the pitch. You could have Kent, Cantwell, Hadji, and then your main striker. But obviously it does depend how the manager's going to set up, because it feels like how we're set up now maybe isn't how we're going to be set up once the manager has all the players in that he wants. So that would be the interesting thing, obviously, to look at. Jim saying, don't think we need Aribo now. We've got Cantwell, Tillman and Lowry, very similar players. Yeah, I think it just depends how the manager's going to utilise them. When you look at that, I mean, obviously Alex can obviously play off the wide positions. That's something that he's done for the academy and the B team. He can obviously play a bit deeper in that midfield if that's where the manager feels like he's going to get the best out of him. He can obviously play as a 10 in behind the striker, where he's got that freedom to kind of roam and be creative, because there's no doubt that Alex has got the creativity to open teams up. I mean, we've seen that just on the short impact he had in the St Johnstone game, where he was on the pitch a matter of minutes and he fed that ball through. So he's more than capable of playing in that position if needed. Yes, I would play Lowry over Aribo, but I would also play him over Arfield and Wright. And that's the thing. I just think it's having a stronger squad. It's having more players that can come on and make an impact. If Joe's available, and obviously we're just guessing at the moment that would be something that would happen, would he be the right kind of fit for what we need between now and the summer? And that's what I'm trying to point out. I realise it's not a long-term solution, because I don't think Joe will come back up here on a permanent basis, but more to do with now until the summer would be interesting, just in terms of the numbers in that midfield, and it would offer us a wee bit of flexibility from middle to front, because we know what Joe can offer us. Steely saying 4 days left in the transfer window. I think if anything's going to happen, it will probably be the last day of the window now. Either that, or there'll be some frees that come in at the end of the season. Yeah, look, I think the interesting thing we're asking is, and obviously when the Belgian journalist obviously tweeted the other day to say that he'd been over in London twice to do medicals and that basically a contract had been agreed, I think at that point most people thought that a pre-contract had been agreed with asking, which at the end of the day, that might well be the case. Everything has been agreed on that, but Rangers have obviously kind of pushed the deal and they want to try and do it now. But obviously, there seems to be kind of loggerheads between the two clubs with regards to the valuation of a player who at the moment is not in the Standard League first team, that's not playing football, that's not played football for several weeks. So it would be interesting to know where the clubs are in terms of the fee. From what I've seen on social media and most people's opinion, I think most people see it around about £1 million, maybe £1.5 million at a very, very big push. But I don't think the club should be paying £2 million plus sell-ons and all the rest of it. That, to me, makes absolutely no sense when 5 months from now, the guy's basically a free agent, and Rangers wouldn't have to pay a single penny to purchase him. So from that point of view, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to pay that sort of money. If you could get him in the high 6 figures, 7, 8, £900,000, maybe even pushing to the 7 figures for £1 million, then that's fair enough. But I really don't think the club should be going that much higher. But that's obviously just my opinion. Others will say different. JD saying we still have Hadji, Lawrence and Yilmaz to come back. Absolutely. I think the only concern for me is that we just seem to get some players back and then other players get injured. And so having options is never a bad thing. I think it is important that we do add another couple before this window closes, because it looks like with Lawrence, the fact the manager's not really put a timescale on Lawrence is worrying. The fact that Helander basically isn't going to be back this season, we're hopeful that Hadji and Suter are going to come back and be able to play straight away. That might not be the case, unfortunately. It might take several weeks before they're able to play, 90 minutes. So I think we have to look at getting something done now, which is going to help the squad until the summer and moving forward. Because clearly, I think as everybody can see, we are going to have to change things in the summer. We need fresh faces. I think bringing the average age of the squad down is a big thing, because I think when you've got a younger squad of players, there's a much higher resale value on those type of players as well. Whereas if you sign somebody who's 29, 30, 31, etc., there's really no resale value at the end of that, and that would be a concern for me. I do agree with Caroline. I think £2 million is a bit steep, and I don't think the club should be looking at that kind of money. We'll just touch on some of the other comments, and it's something that was picked up on yesterday by a few people. We seriously need to get another striker in. If anybody's got any names in the comments, just fire them in. I say it's just me that's on this morning, so if anybody wants to bring up any particular player or any other subject, feel free just to drop that in the chat, and we'll obviously kind of work through them. But I do agree. I think it's definitely something that needs to be looked at, especially the fact that Cholak has just recently returned. Roof, I mean, we sort of know Roof's injury worries previously, that it's a concern that the guy could be out for 4, 6, 8 weeks. We just don't know. For somebody that's just got a sore shoulder, given it's not a dislocation or a break, I think we've unfortunately seen previously that this is never great with Kamar, and that it could just last longer than what we hope it is. Just try to pick up. We're needing someone like Raskin in the squad. We need some dig in the middle of the park. Someone that's aggressive, not scared to put in a tackle. I think Ryan Jack is a similar type to that, but I do understand where you're coming from, Steely. I don't think you can ever have enough of those type of players in terms of the aggressiveness in the middle of the park. I think the interesting thing we're asking, we kind of watching a bit more kind of footage on the guy, and he is somebody that can get forward more. And I think he's got a great engine. He's happy to get forward at will. So it would be interesting that he could maybe end up playing as an 8, and you still have somebody that sits that little bit deeper, because it looks as though he's a very talented lad. When he gets on the ball, he is somebody that can actually open up the space. He can drive forward with the ball. And I think for us, we need more midfield players that score goals. So I think that's just something that's been desperately needing. I think that's something that our midfield really has lacked for such a long time now. I think when we signed Tom Lawrence in the summer, I was kind of hoping that he was going to be that guy, and he was certainly starting to show that before that kind of freak injury at the end of that match, which, looking back now, when you kind of read some of the comments, the manager's like, he'll be fine, it's just a knock. And now, 4 or 5 months later, the guy's still not back, and the manager still won't, sort of confirm when he's even going to be due back. It sounds as though he has had a bit of a setback, unfortunately. KD saying, Roof is a pain in my backside. Am I a paranoid? Is just picking up free wages? I think there has been a lot of things said about Kamar, and I think he is just one of these guys who seems quite unfortunate with injuries. For anybody to have picked up the amount of injuries he has in his career, you're starting to wonder if his body can actually hold up to the constant, playing a football at the top level. I don't think we can just keep playing in AstroTurf pitches or heavy pitches and stuff like that, because he just seems to pick up innocuous injuries that seem to be taking him out for months on end. And for a football club like us and the money we have to pay these guys, it's certainly something that I think needs to be looked at, because whether that's something that we can help him with, or whether that's something that the club accept that when they signed Kamar, they knew that he was quite injury prone, that he could pick up these type of injuries. But it's not ideal when the guy is a good player when he's fit, but for a large part of his Rangers career, it's just not really been the case. Curry and Munch are saying £2 million is nothing for a first team player in the world of football, even at our level. Negotiation is fine, but penny pinching could bite us in the butt. Someone else could come in for him. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's knowing what a player's worth in this instance. I think it's difficult to know exactly what standard wage you're looking for. There's been fees kind of ranging from €1 million to €2 million with add-ons, sell-ons, all this other stuff. I just think when you look at the player, the fact he's not actually part of the first team squad, the manager has basically sent him to train with the academy. He's not actually training with the first team players at that club. So there must be a limit as to what his worth is at this point, especially the fact that it looks like Rangers have already basically agreed everything with the player. It is just trying to finalise this final part of the deal. So a bit like what Corey Munch are saying, somebody else could come in, but if Rangers have already agreed a pre-contract, then it's really only Rangers that can obviously agree a fee with standard wage at this point for the player to come now rather than in the summer. But obviously we'll need to wait and see. Hopefully that is some positive news in the coming days. If anything does break, then we will obviously jump on and do a breaking podcast. We've got it. I'm sure some people probably seen it the other day there that we've actually already kind of set up a podcast in the back potentially for Nicholas Raskin. So hopefully once it does happen, we'll be first to jump on and talk about his signing, because I'm sure for a lot of people that's what they're waiting for now. McCrory, Goldson, Suter, Davis, Raskin, Lawrence, Tent, Kilman, Cantwell, Morelos. It's an interesting system, mate. Interesting system. I'm not so sure we'll ever play that system, but it's certainly an interesting one. Aldo bringing up the rumour that was there yesterday as well, Morelos to Inter. I think, like, without being disrespectful to Alfredo, I'm not so sure that's the level of club that he's going to move to if he does move come the summer. When you look at Inter Milan and the striking options they have, I'm not really sure where Alfredo would get the game time on that front. And I think it's just one of these things where like agents are kind of pushing these type of things at this time of the window. Obviously, Alfredo's a free agent. He can basically go wherever he wants at the end of this season. But I'm not so sure that Inter Milan is worth that type of money. Adam Calmore saying, has Roof been worth what we paid for him plus what we are paying him now? Look, what Kamar's able to do when he's on a football pitch is undisputed. I mean, anybody that's watched Kamar when he's actually fit and playing, he's as good a goal scorer as we've had in quite a long time at Rangers. His movement in the box is absolutely fantastic. You only need to look at the goal he scored in the semi-final, where he just takes a step back away from the defender. That opens up all the space. It's a good cutback from Scott Wright, but then like you just look at the finish from Kamar. He's such a smart footballer in the penalty box. The way that he shifts his body, the way that he knows where he has to be, and the thing is, he's not the quickest. So like his football brain is clearly very good, because the way that he's always able to find those little pockets of space in an 18-yard box, which can sometimes be very cramped, it's a fantastic art, and it's something that Kamar has mastered. Unfortunately from him, the other problem that he seems to have is that he just can't stay fit. I'm sure it must be frustrating for him as well. I'm not sitting saying that he wants to be injured. Clearly he doesn't. But it's clearly just a huge frustration for supporters that every single time he seems to get back, he seems to break down again. And that's, I think, the biggest frustration for anybody. Jimmy Duff asked, "Is there any truth in the Arfield to Hibs rumours?" I saw somebody had tweeted that this morning. I would find that hard to believe, to be honest, Jimmy. I think, especially right now, given where we are with the midfield numbers, and I'm not so sure Scott would look at moving to Hibs as the right career move at this stage. I still think Scott could probably go back to England and get a club if he chose to do that without any real issue. I still think Scott can offer quite a bit to teams. It just feels like at the moment we see him more as an impact player, somebody that can come off the bench, can get into dangerous areas from middle to front, and he's more than capable, as we've seen in the Aberdeen game, to get those 2 goals late on, which obviously was something special for a lot of Rangers fans, given where we were in that game for a large part of it. Curry Muncher saying, "Well, on the subject of football, you must be picking up some appearance fee for the Rangers Rabble in the morning pods." Thanks very much, mate. Unfortunately, no fees for me, mate. Just happy to help the guys out and talk about Rangers. It's always been my passion. Hoping to do an academy pod quite soon as well. So I'll hopefully catch up with you on that. There's a lot going on now. It sounds like there's a lot of movement with Josh McPake, with Kai Kennedy, with Ben Williamson, and a few other players potentially leaving. So if any of that does happen, we'll try and kind of put that all together on the academy pod, and obviously we'll let you know. I think the big thing for me at the moment with a lot of the academy players is, and especially the ones that are at the age of 20 or 21 now, and in Big Lewis Mayall's case 22, these guys now need to look at what the next step is in their career. Lewis has done really well at Kilmarnock. I think it would be a great move if he did move there permanently or to another Scottish Premier League club. But I think the fact Lewis has shown up so well here, I'm sure there's English clubs interested. With Josh McPake, I think there was a conference team, I think it was Chesterfield, were linked with him. A few other English clubs and Scottish clubs are interested in Josh. Kai Kennedy, the strong rumours seem to suggest that he might be going to America. I think there was talk about him going to Memphis in America, where Stephen Glass is the new head coach there, obviously the ex-Aberdeen manager. And one of the Rangers Academy coaches, Mark Spalding, is rumoured to be going there as the assistant manager. So there might be some truth to all of that happening. With Ben Williamson, I think Ben could move to Dundee permanently or potentially another club. Ben's done really well in the Championship, and that'll be interesting to see how that works. But I think the biggest thing for those 3 or 4 guys is that they're playing football and they're playing men's football. I think at the moment there's just not a future for them at Rangers, and it feels like it'd be best to move them on. It's never nice to see such players going, because I thought that Josh McPake was a very, very talented young player. I thought he had the world at his feet, to be honest. When you looked at his size, his technical ability, the way that he could score goals, the way that he could create goals, his record at like kind of under 17, under 18 level was absolutely fantastic. Same with Kai Kennedy, an unbelievable set piece taker, great feet, very creative, sort of great skills in the final third of the pitch. There's so much going on there with those guys. It just feels like for some reason they've drifted a little bit. And it's a real shame to see that, because both of those kids had massive potential. Ben's just a really tough midfield player, very combative, very much enjoys the physical side of the game. So I think playing in the Championship in Scotland would be great for him. Absolutely great for Ben. So it'll be interesting. But I say, if anything does happen on the academy front, we'll put together an academy pod and we'll get that out to you. And I'm hoping that we'll get somebody on for Rangers as well in the next month or so to talk about the transfer window and what's going to happen between now and the end of the season. Don't want to give too much away, because there's a wee bit of give and go on that front at the moment. But once it's all confirmed, we'll put that out there so that you can obviously kind of watch it. It will be pre-recorded, because unfortunately anything that we do with Rangers as a club, whether it's a player or a coach, it has to be pre-recorded, because the club need to check it over before it's released. So if you're a wee bit patient with us, that will be out sooner rather than later, hopefully, if we can get everything kind of signed and sealed with whoever it is we're trying to get the interview with. But I'll not give too much away. Steely saying Robbie McCrory's 24. I think he's another player that if he's not going to get the first team now, we could be. Look, I think I've said that a few times now on the podcast. I was stunned when Robbie signed his new contract, because I'm not so sure Robbie's ever going to be the Rangers number one, because I don't know if you can just put somebody in there at the end of this season and all of a sudden they're the Rangers number one. That just doesn't really kind of sit right, in my opinion. I think if we are going to go out in the summer and sign a goalkeeper, it'll be somebody that is maybe in their late 20s, where you can maybe give them a 3 or 4 year deal, and then you're securing the future of the first team position in goals. I'm not so sure that's going to be Robbie, and that's why I was slightly surprised that he did sign a new deal, especially given the fact he would have been a free agent in the summer, and I'm sure a lot of other clubs would have been interested. Sharpie's asking about the Aribo rumour. It was basically that Southampton are looking to move some players on because they're looking to recruit before the window closes. The manager has basically said that players on the fringes that are not playing under him are basically allowed to leave. So since the new managers come in, Joe's not really played. He's not really been part of the first team squad. And the fact they've been out and signed a couple of new players in the last week, and they'll be linked with another few players in the close to this window, it looks like Joe could be made available. Whether that's permanently or on loan, we'll need to wait and see. I think if it was a permanent deal, that would be totally out with anything we could afford. And that's something, that we could only look to do a loan deal between now and the summer if we were needing that type of player. But I do agree. I think it's unlikely Joe will come back, but I think it's just interesting to put that out there, because it was some of the chat this morning on social media. Look, I think that's something that could happen when you look at, Southampton. They're in a a difficult position, and it's interesting to see them sign guys like Orsic and things like that. That's maybe kind of taken away from the younger players that they'd signed in the summer. But obviously, the new manager's got a different idea to what he wants, and it just appears that at the moment, Joe Aribo's not in that first team plan, which is sad to see because Joe was a really smashing player for us. Okay, we'll kind of finish up on a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up. Obviously, today we've seen like the ACDC thing come out for Rangers. That was obviously different. You know, I think the club could be more smart on that front. You know, there's obviously a lot going on in social media. Obviously, most supporters are looking to sign a player. That's what supporters want to see. Putting out an ACDC range has probably just ignited people this morning. So I'm not so sure that was the smartest idea in the world. But I get the fact the club have to push sales of things. But I think given we're like 4 or 5 days away from, you know, the window closing, putting that type of thing out there probably wasn't the smartest thing from the club as well. And you're only going to get kind of grief and people sending tweets back to them and stuff like that. So I think that could have been done more subtly, maybe once the window had closed, where if you've already announced a couple of new signings in the last day, that kind of news just kind of passes by. Whereas when you put it out 4 or 5 days from the window closing, you're always going to get a huge reaction. But, you know, I'm a big ACDC fan myself, but I'm just not so sure that was the brightest idea from the club to be putting that out there today, given everything else that's going on and off the pitch. And also, just to finish up, there'll be another pod tonight, and then there'll be a preview and a reaction to tomorrow's league game against St Johnstone. And I say we'll continue to do the morning pods up until the last day of the window as well, and then we'll see where things go from there. Martin's just obviously waiting to finalise a few things before going full time. If that's the case, then I think the morning Rabble is going to become a permanent addition to what we're doing at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're obviously really looking forward to bringing more and more to the Rabble over the coming months as well. So I just want to say thanks very much for everybody joining us today, especially the fact it was just me blabbering on for most of that time. I appreciate all the comments, all the likes that you've given us. Thanks for everything you do for the Rabble, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Cheers.